Hello, everyone.
Hello
And
from me too.
I have an amazing guest at Weekly SEO this week. In this episode, we will talk about how to use Data Studio for SEO and with Lazarina. And most likely by the end of this episode, we will able to grasp the basic of level Data Studio, like for the especially SEOs, and learn some great tricks from the Lazarina. So, hi Lazarina again. How are you?
Hello, I'm good. Great to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
And thank you for accepting it also. So I hope it's really good week for you. Probably it's kind of how can I say that, like busy week, both of
Yeah.
us, but
Well, it is always busy, but it's
we
good
handle
to
it.
good to chat. It's good to chat, absolutely.
Perfect.
Cool.
So
So
yeah, all
if you
right.
want, I
So
can
we
just go ahead and get started.
yeah, perfect. Like it's better to meet with you firstly from your slides.
Okay, cool. So today we're going to talk about Data Studio for SEOs, um, reporting automation tips, tricks, and I'm going to share a few templates that I love to use, give shout outs to a few cool people. Let's just get started. So before we begin, a few words for me, like who am I? I'm a technical SEO and innovation manager. I'm a freelancer also in growth and analytics. I dabble in data science more frequently right now than I have ever in the past. But I have studied computer science and data science, NLP. So I absolutely love having the opportunity right now to do this in my role as well. And I also work with clients from different niches, different site size, and also different problems as well. So working with data really helps me to recognize patterns, and I have to say, absolutely love it.
That's the part, actually, like what I love most about this sector. We are operating like with brands from many different sectors, maybe like many from other countries, and that's why so many different like challenges arise, and this actually contributes a distinct of difference and excitement to our work. I'm thinking in this way, and what do you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think no two sites are the same. So if something works for a particular site, then it will not necessarily work for another site. And while there are some guidelines and best practices, once you establish the best practices for a particular site, then the fun begins because you can start testing and implementing some new different strategies and see what works and what doesn't. And to be honest, that's the most exciting part for every site. Once you have all the basics covered, what do you do after that? Data really helps with that because you can actually make data-driven decisions about where your strategy is going to go, which direction. So I love it. I absolutely agree with you. It's super exciting.
It's perfect. And next week there is an event on UK, Women in Tech SEO, and
Yeah.
Bishra is from our SEO team, and she brought. I hope we meet in person next
Yes.
Friday, and that's a cool meet for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So huge shout out to Women in Tech SEO and to Arish. I just want to say and do a shameless plug here. Recording tickets are available still on sale. So if you're for some reason would like to watch
Perfect.
and everything, like absolutely go ahead and buy a ticket now. That's the best thing. You're not going to regret it for sure. So cool. Let's go to the fun facts about me. I actually struggled a little bit with this section. I don't know why. It wasn't probably the most challenging slide of all. But I love animals and plants. Like you can see maybe a little bit of plants in the background, but I have also a dog and two cats. All of them are rescues or adoptees. So I volunteer in
we will see
shelters
it.
as well. Love that. Sorry?
Probably we will see the animals in the
Yeah,
background also.
maybe. I
Yeah.
think fun fact is that in every meeting, an animal interrupts me. So I think that's the funnest fact of all. And then like I practiced karate for more than 10 years. For anyone that doesn't know, that's a form of martial arts. Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and I almost got to the black belt. I had some trainings and teaching, some international, wins and losses. So it was a very, very fun time of my life. I
So
love. Sorry.
that's kind of dangerous. I sounds like so dangerous for me. Karate,
No,
10
not at
years.
all.
Right.
Yeah, I did learn a lot of things, but one of the main teachings in karate is just to always use it as a form of self-defense, and it's a lot more to do with kind of mental, like the way you perceive things mentally, as opposed to like a fighting sport or a fighting discipline. So yeah, just a fun fact there. I love swimming and I love doing yoga. I also worked in hospitality in 3 countries and for more than 7 years, so I can make killer cocktails, absolutely. And I used to collect mugs as well, but I had to abandon my collection because at one point I was moving too frequently and I could not keep them safe. So I just had to leave them at a rental at some point.
Actually, I'm also collecting this mug collection from, like, there's a collection from Starbucks. And if you are going a city and you can buy this mug, it's the same illustration work. And yeah, I have this collection, but I just have one mug from Warsaw. So maybe I need to buy 1,000 more.
Absolutely. Mine were always from places where, secondhand shops and things like that. So I used to go into secondhand shops everywhere I visited, like a new town or something. If I find a shop like that, I used to go in and choose the quirkiest mug of all. So they did not have a single theme or anything in common. There was one that had just like little footballs, and it was so random, and I loved it. So that was it. That was my little collection. But anyways, cool. So what are we going to cover? Like, what are people here to see? We're going to talk about Data Studio, some benefits and limitations, some reporting automation tips and tricks. Although I really do want to say that we're only going to be scratching the surface today. There are so many things that you can do with Data Studio, and we cannot possibly cover that in a 30-minute webinar. So just some things to get you started, essentially. Then how to turn spreadsheets into reports. I will kind of be sharing a very holistic overview of my process when I encounter a spreadsheet that I think is going to be more useful as a dashboard. And also some templates that you should add to your arsenal in order to make your life easier as an SEO. So let's get started. But before we do, I just want to ask people in the audience, are you guilty of any of these statements? The first one is, I'm not really that good with data. The second one is, not really an analytics person myself. The third one is, I wish I could have more time for fun automation and advanced tech projects, but I'm too busy. And at the same time, I manually report on data in spreadsheets or slides every week and month. If any of these apply to you, or even just the latter two, then meet your new best friend, honestly. Like, Data Studio will become your new best friend because you have access to data for more than 800 data sets, almost 500 connectors. There is probably not a single thing that you report on that you will not be able to report on in Data Studio. And not only that, but you also have a huge arsenal of templates and dashboards that are already created that you just need to plug your data in. And 90% of the time, they're going to look better in Data Studio than they look in the slides, in the spreadsheets, or any other form of reporting that you currently do for your clients. And the beauty about it is that they can become fully automated as well. So let's talk about some benefits of Data Studio. Why even bother with this at all? And it's a long list, but I'll try to get through it as quick as possible. First of all, you can visualize any data that you want, and easily. You just plug in a data set, and based on the template that you have, you will have that visualized. You can pull data from multiple data sources, and we're going to talk about how you can also blend these data sources as well in a bit. But this will essentially increase your understanding of data and increase your understanding of how particular data points connect with one another. You can also share and export Data Studio reports very, very easily, which is always a plus. They're very easy to read and pretty to look at if you put in the time to, make them pretty. But most of them already are quite advanced anyways, and there are some very quick ways to, make reports beautiful. And another cool thing is that it is dynamic, and that there's also fresh data with most of these data sets. Of course, we're going to talk about some limitations, but only even just these two things are a massive plus over slides or reports that are just pulled and they're not interactive. So interactive experience is something that every single stakeholder is going to be able to appreciate. And also the fact that you can go into a Data Studio report, maybe whilst you're talking with a client, and actually have an interactive experience together where you're both, interacting with this report, pulling the most important insights for each and every stakeholder that is going to be interacting with it. And also, as I mentioned, there is just an abundance of Data Studio templates that are free, and including for things, the generic ones that are for Google Analytics, maybe for AdSense, Google Search Console, YouTube Analytics. But then you can go very deep into, the rabbit hole of templates and find things that are very edge cases that you might think that nobody has thought to make a template about this. But in most cases, there are already templates about very edge cases. So it's a very huge benefit to get started with a template and build it so it suits your clients. And finally, it's very easy to learn with free Google Data Studio tutorials. There is a tutorial in the Google Analytics, as far as I remember, but there's also a ton of resources out there, not only video resources, but articles and different tutorials to teach you essentially everything that you need to know about Google Data Studio. So let's talk about...
May I add something here?
Yes.
Especially for the fresh data, that's really, really important for maybe freelancer and also for agencies. Because, if you are working with a brand and if they have a marketing department and they always want to check how is the organic side and how is the performance there. And if you don't have any automatically data dashboard, that's kind of painful for you because you need to manually, prepare something for them and you need to share with them, etc., etc. That's all problems. But fresh data is really important here. If you communicate very well with the marketing department from another company, that's just I just try to attract for that issue. That's the fresh data. Yeah. It's the most important for me.
Absolutely. And also the fact that you can, for me personally, the fact that if you know that you are creating a certain type of report every week or every month or every quarter, it doesn't matter. If you know what the stakeholder wants to look at, for instance, whether you're reporting to your teammates or whether you're reporting to C-suite stakeholders, you will know exactly what they want to see in terms of that report. And if you know this and you're doing it anyways, why not just do it once and, reuse that? Why would you have to do it every single time? And most of the time, if you do it once and then you just aim every time you do this report or something else to just build on top of that, you will see that your dashboards are going to become very quickly very advanced. And, the insights that you're getting from them are going to be a lot more nuanced than then if you are doing those things ad hoc, every week you create a report for 5 different clients, and you fail to see the patterns in them, you're just pulling some metrics, and there's no way for you to track things like how these are progressing over time and things like that. You fail to see the relationships between certain things that are happening, for instance, annotations and things like that for your events. And essentially, I feel like Data Studio allows you to focus not much on the building the particular report, but on gathering the insights from it. So I think for me personally, that's the most valuable thing. Absolutely. Cool. So the limitations, the things that you need to know about. So full disclosure here, I wrote about limitations last year. And I remember at that time, and I still am, I was absolutely obsessed with Data Studio. And I literally had all of my personal finance tracking and all of my personal life in a dashboard in Data Studio. And it was so much fun. But I quickly discovered some limitations of it. I have an exciting update at the end of the slide regarding one of those limitations that I found there. So first of all is that you cannot combine more than 5 data sources for blending, and all of the data sources should have a joining key. So the joining key part is no longer the case, but you still have a limit of no more than 5 data sources for blending. An alternative is to blend data offline or use automation tools to ease that process. You can incorporate many data sources. However, what I've found is that if you go maybe above 30 or maybe even 50 data sources for a single dashboard, for instance, if you have a multi-page dashboard, like 10 plus pages, all of which every single page of this dashboard having maybe 10 different data sources, not only is that not going to tell a good story, but also your report is likely going to break. So people that use Data Studio a lot know that it has a tendency to just show like a blank error of death, so handling reports should be something on the front line. So yeah, absolutely. And another thing is,
you are flowing wrong data, like another brand data to another brand. That's horrible.
Yeah, no, not that much like showcasing data from another brand, but more like imagine going onto a call and half of your report is not working. It just shows Data Studio is encountering an error, and it's just I've been on calls like that. And to be honest, quick tip here: I discovered this version history, and you can actually publicly publish a particular version of the report, and then when you edit it, you can not publish these edits, so that your clients are always seeing a version of the report that is functional, which is very important. A good tip for people that are working with Data Studio on a daily basis. So another thing is to be aware of sampling. When you Data Studio samples a lot of the data sources, and also the more filters that you apply to a particular chart or table, the more likely it's going to be that you're going to see some sampling. And one example that we have at the moment is that bar charts are sampled at a bigger rate than scorecards. So you might have a scorecard on a particular page of the template, and you see, for instance, a scorecard showing 400 pages with clicks or something like that, whatever. And then the bar chart is showing like 300. And if you see some discrepancies between the charts that you have on the table, just scroll down to the bottom left-hand corner. And if you see a show sampling button, click on that, and it will showcase to you the different rates at which different charts on the page are sampled. So just a very important thing to know. For instance, why you're seeing discrepancies between the same type of field on the same page and the same data source, most likely it is sampling. Another thing is that when copying filters from a dashboard template, you copy the template and you plug in your data. The filters most likely are not going to be copied. So you need to manually go in and select the dimension that is matching the filter from the original tutorial. So that's something for people that are creating templates. If you are publishing them with a post, It's always good to say exactly how your tables have been filtered in order to achieve the particular views in your template, because it is very useful for users to know. Another thing is that the usability of connectors highly depends on your internal database schema. And I don't want to name and shame, but there are some platforms that we use as SEOs that have a very segmented database schema. So what this results in is that a particular platform will have maybe 3 or 4 different connectors, depending on, for instance, whether they offer position tracking with one connector, and then they offer a site audit with another connector and things like that. So if you are trying to visualize the 360 data using that type of connector, that will very quickly multiply the number of connectors you have for a particular report, which is, of course, kind of a limitation considering what we said about having multiple data sources for a single template. So it means that your dashboard is going to be a lot more error prone that way. So alternative for this will be to use an API instead of the connectors when you see that these connectors have a very fragmented database. And in that way, you'll be able to kind of control the data source there. And another final thing, and the most exciting thing actually, is that data blending uses a left outer join. So this was the case until yesterday. So as of yesterday, this is no longer the case. Exciting news, Data Studio updated their data blending options. So we have 4 new types of blending available to us. And I just want to give a quick shout out to this Data Studio wizard, Mehdi. He is amazing. Like, absolutely go follow him right now. He creates super cool visualizations with Data Studio. He is an absolute expert in everything that he does. But back to the blending. We now have an inner join, right outer join, left outer join, full outer join, and cross join. You can pause these, and later on you can review these in the slides. But what this means is that we no longer have to have a common field between the 2 data sources that we are joining. And we are no longer limited to the fact that, we have to have the first data source containing all of the data that we want to display, which was the case with left outer join. So this is something that, if you're not familiar with SQL, whichever way you pronounce it, it might be a little bit more complex to kind of grasp. However, Mehdi has an amazing article on this, and Data Studio also has very good guidelines on how to blend data. So it is all I can say within this short webinar today is that this is a topic on its own, but it really opens up a lot of opportunities for blending data and visualizing different data sources and really getting to the nitty-gritty of the data that you are displaying. So all I can say is yay. Lots of yays for this news. I was very, very happy when I read it. So
that's the digital environment, every time everything is changing.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So when I was blending data beforehand, it took me a while to kind of understand, or maybe like justify why this isn't possible in Data Studio when it is absolutely possible in other Google's tools. But when I had, when I read the news yesterday, I just thought, amazing, well done. Super proud. So let's talk about some quick wins, tips and tricks for applying Start in Data Studio. So I will share a few formulas. Most of the time these are just custom dimensions that regardless what data source you're using, as an SEO you might want to segment your data using these custom dimensions. So the first one is to extract the brand name from a URL. And the use case here is when you're doing SERP analysis or competitor analysis, and if you have the URL as a dimension, you might want to see a custom dimension where it just summarizes the different brands and returns a count on how many URLs they have in your particular data set. So for instance, if we have a competitor analysis that includes 5 brands, amongst which are Google, Moz, SEMrush, or whatever, here, you will, with this custom dimension, you will have a count of the URLs in this particular field, and you will have google.com or moz.com as the label of this count. So a very cool, useful thing to have. Another thing is that this formula here shows you two different ways to create buckets for positions, and also a way that you can visualize this using kind of like a distribution chart. Use cases here are when you're doing SERP analysis, when you're doing Google Search Console analysis for your own queries that you're ranking for, or again, when you're doing competitor analysis. The particular chart that I have shown here is for a competitor analysis of 8 different competitors and the positions in which they are ranking URLs at. So that is very useful to know and really have a bird's eye view on your data set. So in this regex here, you can see different ways to achieve this. Again, I'm not going to go into too much depth about this. There's a lot of regex guides out there, and you'll be able to very quickly navigate how to build these regex functions. Another thing is to extract the top-level directory. Very useful when you're doing, again, competitor analysis to see how competitors are structuring their URLs. And it's also very useful when you're doing SERP analysis. But another thing that this formula is going to be very useful for is if you want to segment your data based on page section, if you're doing analysis on your own site. So this is one way here, if you already know the sections of the site. But if you don't know them, the first step would be to extract the top-level directories and then visualize them with this type of drop-down filter here. Again, very, very useful. Very useful to be able to have this type of filter in your report, because you will be able, for instance, if you're doing things like Core Web Vital reports or any form of website analytic report, it will be very useful to know which sections are performing well, and especially useful if you are benchmarked on the performance of a particular section on the website, for instance, the blog, let's say, because most of the non-brand pages are typically in the blog. So very, very cool things here. Another thing is to create a very, very simple field to show the pages with clicks and pages without clicks. Again, this is very beginner friendly, but very useful in order to see and prioritize the pages that you're giving recommendations for, and maybe pages that you want to do some on-page optimizations for.
Yep. There's a question here. How can I get these formulas?
Yeah, so I will upload the slides afterwards on SlideShare, and I'm sure that you can share them with the audience of the webinar today. So you'll be able to get them later on via the slides.
And also there's a kind of sources below the slide, and also we can share the presentation after the weekly SEO.
Yeah, so you'll see the sources at the bottom here. For any formulas that you cannot see, they're quite easy to, for any formulas that you cannot see sources that are very specific, like for instance, this one, you'll be able to, navigate based on the images. But happy to share the slides, no problem whatsoever. So regarding the language filter, this is very useful when there are some international pages or versions of the website. So if you have within the URL, then you are able to create a filter in the report that will allow you to segment the data that you are looking at based on the language of the pages. So very quick, but very useful, especially for Search Console analytics, website analytics, and even when you're doing competitor research and SERP analysis. Another thing is a dashboard that I shared a while ago, search intent classification in Data Studio has become quite popular recently. But if you, for some reason, don't have access to SEMrush or any of the other tools that do provide these labels for the search intent of the keywords, then you can absolutely create a very perhaps a little bit more basic version of these type of filters in Data Studio. I've written a long tutorial about this, and I also have a Data Studio dashboard template about this. But just to kind of give a quick overview how this is done is essentially you include keywords that signal the type of intent. So for instance, if we look at the four main categories, the informational, navigational, commercial, and transactional intent, you will have particular keywords that indicate the intent for long-form queries. And for instance, for transactional, as we can see in the example on the slides, is that this is indicated by keywords like buy, price, cheap, expensive. If we look at, for instance, informational intent, it will be kind of no queries, which are maybe question-oriented, like who, why, what, or maybe indicate the type of content that the person is looking for, to be a guide or an infographic or things like that. So again, this is a very long topic, but you can find a lot of cool resources about this in the resources mentioned. Another thing, and this is the final one, is to do a branded versus non-branded keyword split, and that is very, very common. And I'm sure we're not, groundbreaking with this recommendation, but at the same time, I know that a lot of reports that I've personally seen don't have this, but it is a very, very useful filter to have in many reports, especially because in most cases, you might find that your branded queries are skewing the performance, like reported performance being higher, when actually when you remove the branded queries, it turns out to be a little bit lower. So something to keep in mind. And now, how to turn spreadsheets into dashboards, or otherwise, how to turn this boring spreadsheet into this cool dashboard, and why we should actually think about doing this more frequently. So I've tried to summarize the process into 4 steps. The first one is to assess and explore your data. So when you have a spreadsheet or any type of data, first of all, you would need to know what the structures are. So for instance, if you have maybe a data set with 20 different columns, you would need to know which columns are contain numeric data, which columns contain textual data. Are there any that contain Boolean data, such as yes or no, or like any sort of maybe labels, for instance? And just to provide an example, what we discussed in all of the different tips and tricks, these are essentially labels that we will provide to the data. So if you know that your data does not have labels, by exploring it, you will be able to know where you need to provide labels in order to enhance the understanding of the user later on for the particular dashboard that you're building. So the first step is access to the data and exploration. After that, you need to analyze the data and build the support dimensions that we mentioned earlier on. The most important thing here is to start by exploring the data via a table or anything like that, and then try to see where you can provide additional support for the people that are going to be using the dashboard via custom dimensions. And specifically here, I want to highlight that it's important that via the dimensions that you build, you tell a story. So you might have a data set that does not have any additional support, and via the dimensions that you build, you might be able to tell particular stories, for instance, about how your international pages are performing, how the pages are performing in the context of branded versus non-branded or search intent, how particular pages are performing, maybe that tackle commercial search intent and that are non-branded. So if you get my drift here, the more custom dimensions that you build, the more support that you build for this particular data set, the more useful it's going to be for very niche audiences of this data. So the step after that would be to split by sections and to visualize. Now, in the visualization subsection, sub-point of this process, I do want to highlight that it's important to kind of balance things out. And here, the knowledge that you have for a particular data set from step number 1 is going to be very, very useful, because if you know the particular dimensions of your data and the types of data that you have, you will know what will be important for your stakeholders to see. For instance, if you are building a report for C-suite managers and executives, you might not need to include any tables that allow them to dig deep into the data, because they might not be interested in doing that. They just want to see the bird's eye view and maybe some comparative metrics of how the site is progressing over time and things like that. But if your dashboard is going to be something that is going to be used on a daily basis, maybe by an analyst or a manager, then you would need to include additional pages that allow for them to dig very deep into the data and essentially use this dashboard as a tool that is a very good indicator for them to know exactly where to look at later on when they assess the issues that have been highlighted by the dashboard. So again, here it's very, very good to know whether if any exploration is needed. Allow for the users to explore the dataset themselves within the dashboard. So use a pivot chart or a table to actually allow for a very nuanced understanding of the data. But if an overview is enough, then stick to only visualizations and scorecards. And also at the start, if you use this process, you should come up with different questions that you want this dashboard to answer, kind of like the KPIs of this data set. And of course, in step number 3, when you visualize, you want all of these sections to kind of answer the essential questions that the user might have for this specific data set. And finally, customize the macros, implement some color, and prettify the dashboard. And honestly, this is my favorite step, because when you have done all the hard work, and especially when you're building a dashboard, most of the time it doesn't really look that pretty until you implement a consistent color scheme and you put in some cool filters. And when you start playing with the dashboard yourself, you kind of see that this is just, much, much cooler than just a simple spreadsheet. So that's my process, and that's what I usually do. Feel free to jump in with any comments.
And just you are just how can I say, you are focusing on more numbers, and after that you are going to the design side. That's really perfect site for everyone.
Yeah, I feel like because if I kind of have this, maybe a very short attention span. So if I introduce colors early on, I might be able to get distracted from the actual work that needs to be done. So I try to introduce colors later on down the line, and then, try to see what makes it less overwhelming. And now let's get to the fun part. So in the next section, I just want to give shout outs to a few different people and the dashboards that they've built, and kind of show you some different use cases of tasks that you are already doing and reporting on, but you might not be using a dashboard. So essentially, hopefully, these are going to save you some time in your day-to-day job. So first of all, website and search analytics, you can absolutely visualize that. I've included here an example of one of the dashboards that I use. However, there are so many dashboards for Google Analytics and Search Analytics that you are able to copy and include your dataset in. So absolutely do that and save yourself some time. Another thing is the URL inspection API data. So you can visualize this. I recently released a dashboard for this API, and you can get the template and the tutorial on my website. You can also do search intent keyword research and classification. This is another dashboard that I released a while ago. Very quick visualization on a data set that you have for different keywords that you've pulled perhaps from different sources. And you can split them based on the intent that they signal in the query. Then you can also do Google Ads data. You can visualize it. You can see if you are reporting on that type of thing. You can see the different metrics for visibility, acquisition, conversion, cost at a one page, which is very, very convenient when you have to do very quick summaries of the performance. Then I just want to give a shout out here to Alice Russell. She recently released a dashboard for a crawl. So if you're doing a site crawl with Screaming Frog, you can just plug in the data source there. And she has a very cool template with many different sections, as you can see here, that show you the performance page by page for the important sections of the website. So a big shout out, go follow her. She's amazing, and she often releases dashboards that are super, super useful. Screaming Frog has also released a dashboard for automated crawls for the different sections that you can report on when you're doing a site crawl. So shout out to them too. You can get a copy of this dashboard on their website. And I've also previously talked about how you can visualize in Data Studio a little bit more technical, crawls and audits, such as the Core Web Vitals audit. Again, my dashboard here uses Screaming Frog, and you can get it on my website. But I also want to give a shout out here to Tony McCreath, that has created a dashboard that is so comprehensive and really, really cool. It has, as far as I remember, the connection is made via BigQuery for the dataset. And again, he utilizes the PageSpeed Insights API. So I just want to give all of these examples because I want to show you that for most of the tasks that you're already doing, there are not one, not two, but maybe like 50 or 100 different templates. And you can just pick and choose which one suits your needs the best and stakeholders that you're reporting for.
That's really important, like to monitor, like for the field data, for time to first byte, maybe like first contentful paint, because we can't access this data through the Search Console very well. That's a really useful dashboard for SEOs and also for the software developers, because someone is tracking this, someone is tracking the performance here, who is like SEOs, and also someone is operating here and changing something on the website, technically software developers, and that's really, really perfect and useful dashboard.
Yeah, so just here, like the page level drill down of my dashboard is exactly what I use when I communicate with developers in my freelance, clients, because it really allows you to see certain issues that are present across entire sections. So if, for instance, the website uses a particular theme for certain sections of the website, and that theme is causing some trouble in terms of page experience, loading, and Core Web Vitals, if you're able to see this page section split, then it's very easy to communicate to developers, hey, you have this theme that's causing issues, or maybe the fonts that you use on this section are a little bit too much, or things like that. Essentially, it could even be just a plugin that is implemented on this section, and having this data allows you to essentially prioritize your recommendations, because when you look at the reports that are given by Google, or even the Lighthouse report, most of the time they do signal that the issue is there, but they don't allow you to actually dig deep into the data, and especially for websites that are multiple thousand pages and things like that. So yeah, it's super, super useful comment. I absolutely agree with that. And yeah, I just want to say before we finish, because we're at the end, we are really just scratching the surface. I can talk about Data Studio for hours and hours. I know that might bore some people, but I just absolutely encourage you to go ahead, copy a template, get started with it. Just try to build some cool templates. There is so much opportunity and so many areas that are unexplored, and I guarantee you that your stakeholders are going to be very, very happy that you are enabling them with a tool that they can actually play with themselves instead of giving them a static report of performance. So yeah, just think of the possibilities and get started. So that's everything. That's everything from me.
So thank you for every insightful slice, Lazarina. That's really, really amazing Data Studio episode for everyone. And probably who doesn't know Data Studio, probably they get some lots of tricks from you, and also some basic information. So thank you for this participation. And
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
So maybe that's the promotion time for us. Like you can sign up for our newsletter where we share important SEO topics with you, as Lazarina Stoy shared today. And you can get information also about weekly SEO, every episodes. So yeah, that's all. So thank you for everyone, and thank you for participation. And so see you next week. Bye
See
bye.
you. Bye.